the last few Sundays ago, last time I was up here, I started a new series called 7 Mothers. And it's based on 7 mothers in the Old Testament. As you found out, some of them a bit unconventional. And part of the reason is also look at why are they in the Bible. And because we believe that there's nothing in there by accident and everything has a meaning. And the first mother I started with is the mother of Moab. And if you did your research, you found out that she was the daughter of Lot. She conceived Moab in a rather or very sinful way. And we're going to cover the punishment for that later on today. But despite that, and the importance is that through Moab and the Moabites came a lady called Ruth. Ruth was an ancestor of David, which also means that she was an ancestor of Jesus. Which also means that Moab, his mother who conceived him a very sinful way, and Lot were ancestors of Jesus. And the important thing there, as I said last time, was God chooses. Okay? God chooses. And God chooses sometimes people we think, really? What? And it's his choice. And if you take that back to what Charles said earlier with no shame, take your shame away. God chooses. It's not up to you, it's not what you do, what you don't do. God chooses, period. So just to recap a bit more from last time, it started off in Genesis 18, where God meets Abraham and he tells him his plans for Sodom and Gomorrah. And it wasn't to justify what he was about to do, but to share, as he saw Abraham as a partner. And also to make it very clear, when we read the Bible, that there was no righteous person in Sodom. Okay? Abraham pleaded for 50 down to 10 righteous people. And the Bible tells us there was nobody righteous in Sodom. We looked at Sodom, and it says, especially in Hebrew, that every person, every single one, from small to large, from young to old, it said was in front of Lot's house, which we know wasn't true. But the picture was that everyone in that town, in that city, was in on it. They were all supportive. They were all taking part in one way, shape or form. There was nobody who stood up and said, no, we shouldn't be doing that. So there was no righteous person in that place. And then we started looking at Lot. I know the picture looks a bit like Ed, but it's Lot. And the question was, if they hated strangers so much that there was very little chance of a stranger coming out alive, how come Lot was still alive and thriving? We're never really told that in the Bible itself, but we know he came with a large host of servants, a large host of animals, cattle, sheep, whatever, and so there was lots of him. He was quite rich at that time, and Sodom, one thing they did like is riches, so they would have he would have impressed them. And it's also thought that the family he had, which we know little of, may have come from there as well, so he may have married into that town. We also learned that he actually took the angels in when they arrived at Stone, and when the crowd came to take them, he very kindly put his daughters forward to be raped and murdered. What a nice guy, we said at the time. Taking a closer look at him, we started doing that. He actually was part of the issue, which may have been why the angels didn't go, yeah, we'll come with you straight away. The thought is that he was actually in some sort of leadership position in that town, and so he was actively involved in the evil they were doing. And at the very least, he was compromised. He was compromised between some sort of knowledge of good or bad, which showed in him being hospitable after all, but also showed that he was compromised by actually still taking part in the evil they were doing. And we finished last time by saying we shouldn't compromise, right? We should stand by what we believe in, and we should not compromise our action because it's easier to do so, because it looks more attractive, we kind of like that lifestyle or whatever. We shouldn't compromise because we get into a position where we are then compromised, and sooner or later you can stand on two ladders for so long before you do the splits. And at some stage, either you fall off both of them, or you'll have to cling to one of them. And the danger is very often we reach for the wrong one. Okay, so don't compromise, stay on the right side. Now, I also said that a bit like our commentaries that we use for understanding the Bible more, for teaching it, the Jews use something they call Chazal, which is a mixture of additional explanation, of additional stories around the time, and so forth. And these collections are seen as quite authentic in the Jewish religion. And they use them quite a lot when it comes to teaching, when it comes to interpreting. So, having looked at Lot, let's look at his wife. What do we know about her? Very, very, very little. In English, Genesis 19, verse 26, 12 words. That's all we know about her, 12 words. In Hebrew, it's 6. 6 words, her entire story. And what is her story? She looked back and she became a pillar of salt. That's the only thing we know about her. The Bible doesn't mention her name, where she came from. And let's start with the punishment. This feels a bit harsh, doesn't it? You turn back, boom, salt. A bit harsh? You think it's a bit harsh? Maybe, maybe not. See, we just read about God who told Abraham what he was about to do, and he showed him, my punishment is just because there is nobody righteous in stone. Why would he suddenly put on a punishment which is unjust? It doesn't make sense. Okay? So the question needs to be, what did she actually do that was bad enough for her to be turned into a pillar of salt when she turned round? So that's where we look at the Jewish interpretations, at Chazal, and we read up about her a bit more. It is thought she actually came from Sodom, so she was one of theirs, which were most likely the way in for Lot in the first place. Her name apparently was Edith. We know she was a staunch, what's the right word? A staunch contributor or participant in the evil workings of Sodom, and apparently she hated the fact that Lot practiced hospitality. And the Jewish notes tell us that she actually split the house in his half, her half, because she wanted nothing to do with his hospitality. And the reason for the salt is that when he brought the angels in, he asked her for salt, for some bread. She went to the neighbor's house to get the salt, rather than give him her salt, which then alerted the neighbors that there were guests in the house, which then brought the people in front of Lot's house to rape them. And she turned and became a pillar of salt. Right? There is more to it when you read under it. It's not necessarily harsh. The other thing is, if you look at Luke 17, Jesus talks about the Son of Man in that section. So it's only a small section of that. He says, it will be just like this on the day of the Son of Man is revealed. One day no one who is on the housetop with possessions inside should go down to get them. Likewise, no one in the field should go back for anything. Remember Lot's wife. That's the only other time in the Bible she's ever mentioned. Remember Lot's wife. Whoever tries to keep her life will lose it. Whoever loses it will preserve it. So from Jesus' reaction and teaching, we gather the fact that she turned around because she didn't want to lose that life. She liked that life. She didn't want to lose that life. She caused, if you believe the Jewish interpretations, the people that get in front of Lot's house in the first place. She probably was very, very angry with Lot for offering up her daughters instead, who were daughters of Sodom, daughters of the village, that he put up instead of these strangers who she hated. So she may not have been very happy to have a future with him either. So she turned around because she wanted that back. And sometimes we need to understand it as well, that when we turn away from evil, we can't look back. Okay? We can't look back. However attractive that looks and sounds and is, when we decide to move forward, we move forward. We move forward with God. We can't keep looking in the mirror. And we also need to understand that when we walk with God, there will be change. Okay? God takes us on a journey. And that change sometimes isn't that palatable, or it's risky, or it's uncertain, certainly uncertain. When we walk with God, it's uncertainty written all over it. We either trust Him or we don't. And if we keep looking back, all we're telling Him is, I don't trust you. I don't trust you. I don't think you will lead me in the right place. I'd rather go back and do it on my own. So we want to move on with God. We've got to walk with Him, trust Him, and not look back. So how did Lot react to his wife becoming a pillar of salt? Anybody?
You get drunk.
Anybody?
You get drunk.
Well, that's a bit later. But yeah, we'll come to that. He didn't. There's no reaction we know of. Now, he may not have liked his wife very much, but surely you have some sort of reaction when she suddenly is gone. I mean, the process of mourning in the Jewish religion is very drawn out. You have like a week of sackcloth, a week of putting ashes on your faces and mourning and crying and weeping and hysteric shouting. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The only time we know, I can think of, where this happened is when God instructed Aaron not to mourn his sons that he punished. And he had to instruct that because it was so unnatural. It was such an unnatural thing to do. And here's Lord, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Now on top of that, the thought is, actually, the rest of his family perished there too. The two men said, do you have anybody else here? Sons-in-laws, sons, daughters, anybody else? Now they're angels, they would have known whether he had or not. They worked quite closely with God. You know, he would have given them a brief. And God would have known, so he wouldn't have had to tell the angel, go and find out who Lord has got. He would have known as well. So the fact that he mentioned sons, daughters, sons-in-laws, hints at the fact there were other people, other parts of his family in town. The general thought is that those two daughters did not belong to the sons-in-law. There were two more daughters to go with the sons-in-laws. Sons-in-law. So they decided to stay behind with the daughters. So they would have perished. If there was other sons, they would have perished. And we talked about it the other day. It's quite a sad thing, but sometimes people will choose to stay behind. And that's one of the sad parts of Christianity. It's one of the sad parts of life anywhere as well, is people won't always be prepared to follow you. And if you look at the New Testament, some of the more strong and impactful teachings of Jesus, people left because they couldn't handle the truth. People can't handle the truth, and sometimes we have to be prepared for that. Ours is not a numbers game. You get 100 people in, well done. Or you lost one, well, that's not very well done. Our job is to proclaim the good news. That's all we are responsible for doing, proclaim the good news. Whoever takes it on or not, that is their own choice and free will, and not our responsibility. It doesn't mean we just forget about them. It means we still keep praying for people, hoping for miracles, but we need to be prepared. Not everybody will be able to follow us. And sometimes it's people that are long church members, we thought were a really good part of it, and suddenly they fall away. And it hurts. It does hurt. But it's their, in the long run, it's their responsibility to get back on track. All we can do is encourage, love, and support. Now, going back to Lot and where he's at now, it's slightly ironic here, because he came to Sodom a rich man. Cattle, lots of servants, everything. He leaves with nothing. the clothes on his body. And he leaves with the two daughters he just put up for rape and murder. Now, that must have been a very interesting conversation that night. So, Dad, talk me through your thinking. Why did you put me up for rape and murder? Must have been a very interesting conversation that night. And true, sometimes we have to face our consequences. Okay? Yes, we are forgiven, but we still have to face our consequences. You can't murder somebody and say, "Oh, I'm forgiven, so it's okay." You still end up going to jail. We have to face our consequences sometimes. And asking God forgiveness doesn't mean we lose our responsibility and we lose our accountability. It's still there. So we need to remember that our actions, sometimes we have to face the consequences afterwards, regardless. The forgiveness is the eternal part from God. So if we move on in Genesis 19, from 27, early in the next morning Abraham got up and returned to the place where he stood before the Lord. He looked down towards Sodom and Gomorrah, toward all the land of the plain, and he saw dense smoke rising from the land like smoke from a furnace. So he knew there was not 10 righteous people in that town. So when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham, and he brought Lot out of the catastrophe that overthrew the cities where Lot had lived. So that's an important point here also. Lot didn't save himself. Okay? There are some parts of the Bible that will call, this 1 Peter 2 or something, calls Lot righteous, who refers to him. But I don't 100% share that opinion. I don't think he was that righteous. He had a bit of knowledge of good and bad. We didn't very well act on it. And it says here that Lot was brought out because God remembered Abraham. Okay? God remembered Abraham's intercession for Lot. So intercession for other people is important. Okay? Praying for others is important because God sometimes remembers and sometimes frees them as well. So, finally we reach the story about the mother of Moab. I'll read it very quickly. Lot and his two daughters left Zoar and settled in the mountains, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar. He and his two daughters lived in a cave. One day the older daughter said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there is no man around here to give us children, as is the custom over all the earth. Let's get our father to drink wine, and then sleep with him and preserve our family line through our father." That night he got their father to drink wine, and the older daughter went and slept with him. He was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. The next day the older daughter said to the younger, "Last night I slept with my father. Let's get him to drink wine again tonight, so you can go in and sleep with him, so we can preserve our family line through our father." So they got their father to drink wine that night also, and the younger daughter went in and slept with him. Again he was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. So both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. The older daughter had a son, and she named him Moab, and he's the father of the Moabites of today. The younger daughter also had a son, and she named him Ben-Ami, and he's the father of the Ammonites of today. What a lovely family, eh? Mm-hmm. That's even worse than the scriptwriters of EastEnders. The interesting, the first thing it says, Lot was afraid to stay in Zoar. Obviously, they must have found out he was from Sodom, Now I'm thinking that the people around there didn't like the people from Stone very much because they were so horrible to other people. So they were thinking, haha, revenge time. So he had to flee.
Did they get punished?
Well, you have to wait and see. You have to wait and see. You have to wait and see. The story is placed right at the end, almost like an afterthought. And the first question is, why does that story matter? Okay. Because that's the last time we ever hear of Lot. That's the only time, apart from them being presented in front of his house, that we ever hear from his daughters. Okay? So why does it matter? We don't even know their names. Well, the first one is, to your question, is the punishment that is given for that. And also the fact how the Ammonites and the Moabites reacted as a people and how they were made an example of. But on the good news, as I said before, there is the story of Ruth, which will be covered separately anyway. Okay? If you were a liberal today, right, living in those times where marriage was mainly meant for reproduction and not for love, you could see, yeah, I can understand the motive behind wanting to preserve the family line. But I don't think that's a really good enough reason, personally. But then you look at the Bible as a whole, and you look at the people in it, and you got to say, what a motley crew. What a bunch of people who keep on getting it wrong. How can these people be chosen? What was God thinking? How can you choose people like that? But as I said earlier, it's God's choice. He chooses. And if we're all honest with each other, with ourselves, we are not in any way, shape or form better than these people that He chose. Okay? And all we know from that is the fact that if God was willing to choose them, then there's no reason why He won't choose us. Okay? If He's willing to choose them, then we can be certain that He will be willing to choose us. So if you ever sit there and thinking, I am not good enough, I'm a bad Christian, what I did was unforgivable, it's not your call. It's not your choice. God chooses. Okay? God chooses. It doesn't matter who we are, what we've done, our standing in society, if we are better or worse than others. He chooses. And He will never choose because of who we are. He chooses us despite of who we are, not because of who we are. Okay? He chooses us because of who He is. So please drop any thoughts of, I'll never be good enough. It's His choice, not yours. There is the question of punishment, okay? And the biblical Old Testament view of punishment is called midah keneged midah, measure for measure, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So the Jewish biblical scholars look at the sort of punishment in terms of what's the punishment against what the crime was, if you like, and and it's fairly consistent. So, but there's various layers of that. If you want to be really ironic, right? Lot ends up getting raped by the two daughters he offered up for her.
Yeah.
Interesting, isn't it? He ends up getting raped by the daughters he was offering up for rape. But it goes further. We don't know much about the stories of Moabites and what their sort of ancestral stories were. But I guess that it wasn't a favourable one towards the Israelites, because those two people were the two people who actively opposed the Israelites going through their land when they were walking the desert. And they were active two people that Moses and the Israelites had to fight to get through their land. One of them, the Amorites, I think, it was the Moabites that tried to get Balaam to bring curses over them. So, if you look at I think it's Numbers 23. Charles, you will correct me in a minute. When it talks about exclusion from the assembly of God, right? The second thing it says, no Ammonite or Moabite or any of their descendants may enter the assembly of God. Not even in the 10th generation. For they did not come to meet you with bread and water on your journey. Okay? So the Ammonites and the Moabites were excluded for good, for their behavior when the Israelites were in the desert. Which may have come from their positioning towards the Israelites, from their sort of traditional stories, if you like. The first thing it says there is, no one born of a forbidden marriage or any of their descendants may enter the assembly of the Lord, not even in the 10th generation. The word it uses for forbidden marriage is mamzer in Hebrew. And it's, to that word hones down on actually what that forbidden marriage is, because it's very specific. It's actually any forbidden sexual union, which is usually any act of adultery, any relation between siblings, and any relation between parent and child. So, while Lot's daughters may not have been punished personally, their whole people, their whole ancestry was punished because they came all out of an unlawful, forbidden marriage, sex between father and child in that case, and because of their attitude towards the Israelites. So they were punished twice. The interesting thing, though, is that eventually there'll be one Moabite who will change now. A lady called Ruth, who ends up being the grandmother of David, who ends up in Jesus' genealogy. God chooses. Okay? God chooses. And he has a habit of making some very bad things come out very good. And that's hope for all of us. He chose us, he chose me, he chose you. And he has a habit of making the things which are bad in our lives good. All we have to do is trust him. Officially, we end here. But just to give you a flavour of the next time, having looked at the fact that the story of Storm and Lord offering up his family to be raped, you would think, well, they will learn the lesson, that'll never happen again. Right? Wrong. Next time, as an epilogue to this, we will look at Storm Take 2. Okay? And if you want to have some pre-reading, it's the last few chapters of Judges. Makes very interesting reading. So we're going to end up the story of Mother of Moab with that part of it, to see how much people learn or don't learn from their actions. In the meantime, I can urge you, do not lose God's choice. Do not stop him choosing you. And Father, I just pray that throughout this we learn the fact that we should stay by our convictions and not acting in very sinful ways. Lord, just help us with that. I also pray that if we do, you help us get back to you. And Lord, above all else, just help us to understand that you chose us because of you. You chose us not because of what we haven't done or what we've done or who we are. You just love us and you choose us. Lord, give everybody that confidence. That confidence that actually, yes, we are chosen. And that was your choice. And let us have that decision in all our hearts, that we don't want to go against that choice, but accept it wholeheartedly. I ask in your name. Amen.